the applications, and it meant that the test automation tended to be for the functionality and at the application level. And we tried a variety of open source and commercial test automation frameworks. These included Calabash, which is a high-level cross-platform test automation tool, using a language called Cucumber. These are all very strange names, but some of you will be familiar with these. So Cucumber is a scripting language which is intended to be readable by people. So it uses verbs such as given something, when something happens, then I expect the following to be visible, I expect the following to happen. Zucchini was another test automation platform focusing on the iOS platform, very similar to Calabash in terms of the scripting language, but a slightly different implementation. We use Monkey Runner, which is test automation from Google. They'd released it a couple of years ago, and it allowed the scripts to be written in a programming language called Python, so slightly more hands-on, but at a different level, a simpler level than writing the application code. And it allows us to put user inputs through clicks and typing into text boxes and check the results, particularly using images to match. Matching images is problematic. It tends to have a very high error rate. In our case, we wanted to make sure that the screens were pixel perfect in some cases and detect any movement in the user interface because it affected the user experience and the feedback we got from users. We also use MonkeyTalk. MonkeyTalk is developed by a commercial company, but they've released all the software as open source and it's free for anyone to use. And it uses a table-driven approach, so it's a bit like working with Excel, to write the automated test cases, and it takes care of many of the details of interacting with a mobile application. In the end, however, we found that MonkeyTalk wasn't that suitable for us, partly because we found that as the operating systems updated, for instance to iOS 6, MonkeyTalk didn't support iOS 6 for several months, and we just had so many problems trying to keep up with it that we eventually abandoned it. For the mobile website, we use Selenium WebDriver, which is a project that many of you will be familiar with. It's used for desktop test automation and also has support for Android and iOS for test automation, so we use that. And we had a proprietary test automation framework where we wrote a little bit of extra code that lived inside the applications, the mobile applications, purely for testing, that allowed us to get extra information from the application and provide extra inputs to augment the testing we wanted to do. Examples of where this can be particularly useful is things like testing the GPS and geolocation, where we could put our own coordinates in rather than relying on other inputs to simulate those values. The project had a 2-week sprint. The engineering teams, the people writing the applications, were also specific to a platform. And as I've already mentioned, the testers were responsible for the specific technology they were testing. So the testers were part of the development team and took part in the stand-ups, which are a daily brief meeting, normally in the morning, where they discuss what they were working on and a brief summary of any problems they might have. And the testers had to provide feedback on a daily basis. And the project used a continuous build, which had limited coverage of automated tests, which is another reason why we needed a lot of the interactive, the human testing. In terms of where was the time spent by the testers on this project, we found that the time was spent in 3 main areas. Testing applications before release. Now, release of a mobile application is different from releasing a web application, particularly where you're dealing with app stores, such as the Apple App Store or the Google Play App Store. When an application needs to be released, you don't give it directly to your users. Instead, it's deployed to an app store. The App Store then at a later time releases that software and makes it available. In some cases, that time might be an hour or so. In other cases, it can be several weeks, particularly when we're dealing with the iOS platform. And we need to take into account this time delay of the app stores when trying to make releases of application, particularly if we want to synchronize releases between the different platforms. So for iOS, we might have to deploy the application a week earlier than for Android. So we'd focus our testing to make sure we tested the iOS application first, and then follow with testing the Android application if we needed to make that choice. Furthermore, when you're releasing to an app store, they have their own quality criteria. We had to make sure the quality criteria were met. before the software was released to the App Store. Otherwise, we risk having the application rejected by the App Stores, and this then caused a major knock-on effect for the project. The second area where time was consumed was testing bugs and bug fixes. Typically, this testing was done by hand. The project also wrote test automation for some of the bug fixes, but most of the testing was done by hand. And again, we had to test it on multiple devices. And we had drawers full of mobile phones of different models and different platforms available to help us do this testing. And the final area that time was consumed was improving the testing process. Part of Agile is getting feedback to improve the quality of the work we do. And during each iteration, we would experiment with a new way of testing and see how we progress with that testing, whether it's able to find problems faster, more effectively, and with less overhead. In terms